Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Randall Harrison with the Leo Office of Labor, and I would like to welcome you all back to the Leo Office of Labor webinar series that is focused on mental health in the workplace. Those of you that have joined us before know that we have switched things up a little bit this year. So in January, we have started a different format of providing quarterly three-part series on a particular topic. So after two successful three-part series that focus on techno stress, and then the other one was on cultivating a workplace culture of mental well-being. We are now in the final part of our three-part series that is focused on building respectful and inclusive organizations. So Deputy Director of Labor Sean Egan is actually out today doing great work focusing on the mission of our office. So I will be today's moderator for the discussion. So a few things before we get started. In order to know about the great content on mental health in the workplace that we provide on a monthly basis, you have to be on the email list. There's no way that you're going to get the information if you're not on that list. So there will be a link posted in the Q&A box for you to sign up for email updates, which provides notification of webinars and other events that are hosted by the Office of Labor. So speaking of the Q&A box, also feel free throughout the webinar to use the Q&A box for any questions that you may have during the webinar. And we will be sure to address as many of those questions as we can before the end. There will also be a link to our workplace mental health hub that has a plethora of information concerning resources. Our workplace mental health report is listed on the website, and you can also view past webinars on a variety of topics that we have covered. And then last but not least, there will also be a link where you can request Deputy Director Egan or other speakers to speak with your staff in person or virtually about any of our labor areas. As you know, our webinars are focused on the three pillars that we have established, which are things that are impacting our mental health, things that are in the workplace, things that are affecting the workplace, and also the individual behavior support. We are currently in the what can we do phase of this work, and the point of these webinars are to provide the tools and also the resources that can be implemented in the workplace now to address these issues. So as we complete our third three-part series that focuses on building respectful and inclusive orgs, I would like to introduce our wonderful guest today, Dr. Tina Riley. So Dr. Tina Riley is an associate professor in the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations at Michigan State University. She has also served as a school's director of professional development and associate director of the school for the past 20 years. She has a wide range of experience helping leaders and organizations achieve their full potential through high impact communications that build trust and promote employee engagement. So, as before, I am a Michigan fan, but because I love what Dr. Riley stands for, I will say go green, go white. Welcome, Dr. Riley, and I will gladly turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Randall. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And folks, if you want to reach out to me after this session, or if you're watching it on a recorded basis and you have questions, please feel free to email me. My email address really truly is robert35@msu.edu. So always happy to hear from you. And keep in mind our goal of healthy workplaces where everyone is treated with dignity and respect, and work doesn't hurt either physically or psychologically. And the workplace investigation process is key to having and maintaining a safe and healthy workplace, because the employer cannot determine or take corrective action until they've conducted a thorough and objective investigation. And keep in mind, when we're talking through this material today, these are workplace investigations. We're not talking criminal investigations. We're talking workplace investigations. And the focus is on finding out what happened, right? The 5 W's: who, what, when, where, and why. The focus is not on proving misconduct, certainly not on condoning misconduct. When you're conducting a workplace investigation, you are on a fact-finding mission. What took place? And particularly when you're dealing with cases of bullying and harassment or discrimination, right? You want to adopt a trauma-informed approach. You want to make sure that you're not re-traumatizing the person, and frankly, creating a space where they can tell you what happened. Now, there's lots that you can do to adopt a trauma-informed approach, but 2 things that you can easily implement. Number 1, create a safe space by giving the person some choices, by giving somebody choice, right? It enhances their sense of control, and they may have lost their sense of control in the event that happened. And that sense of control can help them feel greater sense of safety. So it can be as simple as having 2 chairs and telling the person, select a seat, right? Rather than sit there. So give the person choices. Would you like a cup of water, for example? An easy step to take to enhance that person's sense of safety. Another easy thing to implement when you're adopting a trauma-informed approach to workplace investigations is recognize trauma impacts the way we think, it impacts our memory. So give the person permission to tell their story in their own way, rather than start at the beginning, right? Start wherever you're comfortable. Those kinds of things, and let the person talk through their experience without interruption. It's a really good way to avoid re-traumatizing, and as I said, create a safe space where they can tell the person what took place. Now, when you're conducting workplace investigations, everybody is treated with dignity and respect at all times, right? That should go without saying for everything we do in the workplace. But when you're conducting an investigation, or when you're a party to the investigation, maybe you filed the complaint that something happened, recognize that everybody should be treated with dignity and respect at all times. And part of that signaling respect, right, is starting promptly. If you are responsible for conducting a workplace investigation, you want to start within 24 to 48 hours. Right? Memories fade, we get busy, so if you push it off, it's too easy for that to just sort of go to the back burner. By starting promptly, you're also signaling that you take this situation seriously. So start promptly, again, 24 to 48 hours. And you want to investigate thoroughly without letting it drag on. And yes, I know of investigations that have gone on for a year. That's not a best practice, right, Randall? We were talking about best practices. It is a best practice to conduct the investigation thoroughly, objectively, in a timely fashion. So for many of the circumstances that arise, 2 weeks is a good goal to shoot for, to aim for. In addition, the longer you let the investigation go on, the more people can begin to think, damn, my employer doesn't take this seriously. So again, start promptly, investigate thoroughly and timely so that you can evaluate all of the evidence objectively to determine what is the appropriate course of action. And as you're working through the investigation, you need to respect the rights of everyone involved, and everyone in the process does have certain rights. Whether you have reported an incident of harassment or bullying, or maybe you're being investigated for some kind of misconduct, you have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. I hope you see the recurring theme here. You have the right to be treated with dignity and respect. You have the right to have your complaint taken seriously. And you're too sensitive does not signal that your complaint is being taken seriously. That's just Tina. That's not signaling that the complaint is being taken seriously. Words like, thank you for bringing this to our attention. We take harassment seriously. That signals that the employer is taking your complaint seriously. You also have the right to have your complaint investigated by a neutral party. And Dr. Kaminsky and I were talking about this just last week, and she asked a great question. Well, what's a neutral party? A neutral party is someone who does not have a vested interest in the outcome, does not have a personal relationship with the person, and is not in the reporting hierarchy. So you don't want the supervisor investigating one of their direct reports who has been accused of harassment or bullying. You also don't want that supervisor conducting the investigation when the person who made the claim is in the reporting hierarchy. So a neutral party, generally someone in human resources, someone in labor relations. Now, I have worked with organizations that have entire teams of people that just do investigations. Sometimes cases are such that an organization will hire a law firm to conduct the investigation. But for the most part, somebody in HR who can be neutral, who is not biased, and doesn't have the appearance of bias. That's who should be investigating the complaint. As a complainant, you have the right to tell your side of the events of what took place and to provide witnesses and documentation and evidence to support your story, to support your side of events. If you are represented by a union, and there's reason to believe that the investigatory interview will result in discipline, keep in mind you have the right to have your union rep present. Okay? Again, these are Weingarten rights. If you're not familiar with that, I encourage you, look up your Weingarten rights. And it's you're represented by a union, and there's reason to believe discipline will result. You then have that right to have your union rep present. And you also have the right to be protected from retaliation. And frankly, I encourage all employers to have written policies that say retaliation will not be tolerated and enforce those policies. The employer also has certain rights. The employer has the right to expect you to participate in the investigation and provide honest and truthful information to the best of your ability. So if you're involved in a workplace investigation, and frankly, whether you are the investigator or you have filed a complaint, you've let HR know that you've experienced bullying or harassment or whatever, take 3 steps right at the beginning. They're going to help you stay organized and will help facilitate an objective and thorough investigation. So the first thing you want to do is create an electronic file that includes a timeline of the events. So here's an example, and the names have been changed to protect the innocent, as they say. But this is an example from a couple of years ago. And the timeline example here is from the perspective of the investigator. So as you can see, July 4th, 2019 at 10:54, the HR person who investigated this claim received the complaint from John Anderson. And again, the names have been changed. Now this complaint was received via email. So then you can see that person documented that, and then at 11:30, they summarized that complaint, met with John, the complainant, had him read the complaint. Did I understand this correctly? Right? Make any changes until the investigator and the person who had filed the complaint are both confident that yes, the employer understands what I'm saying happened here, what the complaint is. Now, if you're the person who has been harassed or bullied, or the event has happened to you, I encourage you to do the same thing. When the event happens, take a few minutes, right? Catch your breath, right? Write down the date, the time, and what happened. So, for example, you could say on, what's today? On the 18th of September, Michelle Kaminsky sent me this email. Sorry, Michelle. Right, what actually happened? When you're creating this electronic file and timeline, you want to use neutral, objective language. So I'm not going to say that loser said this, but here's what took place. As you work through the investigation, you're going to add every step to the timeline. So first step in an effective investigation, create that timeline. Second, begin to collect any evidence, videos, documents, relevant policies, and perhaps even labor contract language. You can see here that I've got a link to the contract that was in force at the time the incident occurred. Now, you want to have the source document, the video, any electronic information saved on your computer or wherever in your organization you house these, rather than linking to the website. Things on websites change, things can be taken down. You want to have the source document right there linked to from your timeline that was in effect at the time the incident occurred. This will save you so much effort and time and, frankly, stress. If, for example, 6 months later you end up in arbitration, you don't have to go and try and pull all of these things. You've got everything right there in one electronic file. Also, if you're the investigator and you are now at the point where you're evaluating the evidence, same thing. You've got everything in the same place, so you can easily refer to that source document or that evidence. So you've created your timeline, you've begun to collect what evidence you're aware of, what policies are relevant. Before you start interviewing folks as a part of the investigatory process, take a minute to prepare. You want to prepare for the interviews. If it's a situation where there was bullying that took place in person, visit the site. Where did it happen? Take notes, take pictures. This is going to give you a feel when people are telling you their experience. You can sort of see in your mind's eye. So those of you that aren't familiar with the School of Human Resources and Labor Relations, you don't know this, but we have a very long hallway here on the 4th floor of South Kedzie Hall. And my colleague, Dr. Kaminsky, is several doors down the hallway. So if you're conducting an investigation, something that occurred between the two of us, and you didn't go to the site, and I say, well, I heard Dr. Kaminsky in her office say something, and I was sitting in my office, you don't know that's physically impossible unless you visited the site. So where appropriate, visit the site before you start interviewing folks. Develop a plan for who you're going to talk to, who you're going to interview, and in what order. Of course, you're going to interview the complainant first. That's the person who brought this to your attention, right? Who let you know that this behavior took place. So of course, you're going to talk to them first. Then you want to talk to the accused. And the reason I always encourage people talk to the accused before witnesses is because it gives that individual the opportunity to admit to the conduct, right? Rather than talking with witnesses and co-workers, and people start gossiping sometimes, right? If you talk to the accused after the complainant, you are giving that person the opportunity to admit to the misconduct. Now, that doesn't always happen. So then you have to move to talking to witnesses. And I actually don't recommend calling them witnesses. That can sound a little scary and intimidating. So who else should I talk to? But you will be talking to witnesses as part of the investigation. You may be called as a witness. When you are scheduling interviews to talk to witnesses or the complainant or the accused, find a way to privately schedule those interviews. I'm not talking about the interviews themselves yet, but if you don't normally go out on the shop floor, you showing up on the shop floor and saying in front of my coworkers, I need to talk to you about what happened with you and Dr. Kaminsky on Thursday. Now everybody's talking, right? So privately schedule the interviews, and then of course have a private place to conduct the interviews. And you don't want people waiting to be interviewed sitting in a shared waiting room either. You want to keep this process as private as possible. And no, lunchrooms and cafeterias are not private spaces. I have actually overheard people conducting interviews, investigatory interviews in the cafeterias here on campus. Private space, private space. You also want to think about in advance, what are some initial questions that you're going to ask? Now, you are certainly going to ask follow-up questions, but what are some of those initial questions that you're going to ask? Then you're ready to conduct the interview. When you start the interview, as I said, allow the person that you're interviewing the opportunity to select a seat. If you don't know the person, or you've maybe passed in the hallway, but they don't really know who you are, please take a moment to introduce yourself. It is respectful. It begins to create that sense that, okay, this will be okay. Explain what the purpose of the interview is. And the purpose is to find out what happened, right? Remember, you are on a fact-finding mission. Explain your role and that you haven't reached any conclusions. This is also a really good place to share your expectations. I expect you to participate. I expect you to answer the questions honestly and truthfully to the best of your ability. You might even want to ask, is there any reason why you wouldn't be able to answer questions honestly? Share the expectation that there will be no retaliation, especially if you're talking with the person accused, right? There will be no retaliation, and you let us know if you feel you've been retaliated against, and we expect you not to retaliate. And then ask the person what questions they have. Common questions. Am I in trouble? That's a common question. Well, the answer to that is it depends on what we find out. We're conducting an investigation to find out what happened. Another really common question. Are you going to keep this confidential? Is anybody going to know what I said? You cannot, as the employer, guarantee 100% confidentiality. And if you're being interviewed, recognize that. The employer cannot guarantee you 100% confidentiality. What they can and should guarantee is that only those with a need to know will be informed, right? And do recognize the person who's accused of misconduct, they have a right to know the evidence against them, so they may know, right? They may know what you said. If you end up in arbitration, right, you might even be called as a witness. So I can't guarantee, and employers can't guarantee 100% confidentiality, but you absolutely can say only those with a need to know will be informed. So as you're shifting, you've shared expectations, answered the questions that the interviewee has. It's a good idea to start with some easy to answer directory type questions. This sets the tone. The person gets comfortable. Okay, yes, I do know my phone number, right? So is your phone number whatever? You've worked here for 20 years, is that right? Those kinds of things can just begin to put the person at ease. Then you want to move into these open-ended, non-leading, frankly, trauma-informed questions. And although these are trauma-informed questions, they're appropriate for every investigatory interview. Right? What do you remember about the incident? Or what can you tell me about? And let the person tell their story in their own way. It can be healing to tell straight through without interruption. So let them do that. Then you can come back and ask for clarifying questions or ask for more information. You want to be careful to avoid implying responsibility or blame. And we sometimes do this without meaning to. Our facial expressions, so like, you know, I can signal with my facial expression that I don't believe what you're saying here. Or somebody's being investigated, has filed a complaint for sexual harassment, and the investigator says something like, well, you laughed at the jokes, didn't you? Okay, that is not a neutral fact finder. That's a problem, right? So you want to make sure if you're the one conducting the investigation that you are not implying responsibility or blame. You are there to find out what happened. If you're the one conducting the investigatory interview, take your notes. I encourage employers to have a standard template that they use to open the investigatory interviews and to take their notes. So especially if somebody's telling you something that's very traumatic, it's really easy to sort of get lost and forget, and your own emotions take over. So use your notes, stay on track. Focus on what the individual with whom you're speaking knows. If somebody says, well, Randall said that Erica said that Michelle said, I might interview those people later, but right now I want to hear what you saw, what you heard, what you know. So focus on what the person you're interviewing knows. Periodically summarize to make sure you're understanding correctly. Always ask, what else should I know? What other evidence should I be aware of? And tell the person, you know, reach out if you remember anything else. And folks, this is hard. So please thank them for participating. Thank you for telling me what happened. Thank you for talking with me today. If you're participating in the investigatory interview, so that the claimant or a witness or the accused, you can take your notes as well. Always answer their questions to the best of their ability. You feel your blood pressure start to rise, take a breath. Remember, the purpose is to find out what happened so appropriate action can be taken. Check for understanding. If the investigator doesn't paraphrase periodically, say, I just want to make sure that I understand correctly, right? And if they've captured your statement for you, ask to read that, right? I asked to read that. I was a witness in an investigation, and the person that was interviewing me said, we don't do that. And my question was, like, we want to make sure that you understand what I said and that I was clear in what I said. So ask. If they don't offer, ask. As I said on the previous slide, if you have additional information that you think should be considered, tell the investigator, even if they don't ask. And if you remember something important afterwards, reach back out to that interviewer and let them know. Now, I want to say just a couple more things about statements. If the person is, the interviewer, the investigator is taking your statement, have them read that, right? Have the person being interviewed read that, and you may need to revise that a couple of times until you've got it accurate. Even if the statement is, I didn't see anything, I don't know anything, I didn't hear anything. That's the statement. It should be signed and dated. If instead you provided a written statement, you should also sign and date that before you send that in. When you're evaluating the evidence, and it's the totality of the evidence, review everything. Don't trust your memory at all. You go back, you look at everything. Look for inconsistencies and contradictions. And if you can't resolve a contradiction, maybe you need to have a second interview with that person. That's absolutely fine. Do a bias check, right? What would prove me wrong? I want to make sure that I'm not looking at this through the lens of I want to prove misconduct. If you decide that discipline is appropriate, consider the 7 tests of just cause before you impose discipline. It's not all or nothing, it's not majority rules, but the more of these you can answer yes to, the more confident you can be that your disciplinary approach, what you decided to do, will be upheld if it's challenged, say in arbitration. So did the employee have adequate notice that the behavior could result in discipline? Did the person violate a rule, and was the rule reasonable? Reasonable in the here and now? Was a fair and objective investigation conducted where the person had a chance to tell their side of the story, to respond to the evidence? Does the employer have substantial proof that the person did what they're accused of having done? Again, not criminal, not beyond a reasonable doubt, but substantial proof, more likely than not, clear and convincing evidence. You need to ask yourself, how have we treated others who have engaged in the same behavior? And just do a check. Is the discipline we're imposing appropriate given the infraction, given the behavior, given the person's work history, and time with the organization? So again, remember, fact-finding missions, avoid re-traumatizing anyone. Everyone gets treated with dignity and respect. We start and conduct our investigation promptly, respecting the rights of everyone involved. So with that, I would like to open it up. Randall, did any questions come in?
Yes, Dr. Riley. First of all, thank you very much for that great information. We are close to time, but we are going to address a few questions here. So the first question that came in is, how do you handle when a person is bullied by a manager via a coworker complaining, but that coworker is, I guess, is friends with the manager? So this question is, you possibly never have a safe space when you're already assumed as being guilty per the coworker that is friends with that manager. So I guess they're trying to seek some guidance as to how to navigate that situation.
Absolutely, and that's exactly why you don't want somebody in the hierarchy, right, in the reporting hierarchy, conducting the investigation. If your organization has an HR department, go to the HR department and explain, this is my concern. those parties should recuse themselves that are friends, right? Or that I'm friends with this manager. They should not be involved, other than perhaps they're being brought in as witnesses to share. And the fact finder, the investigator, needs to focus on all of the evidence. So I'm not going to just talk to that manager and that manager's buddy, right? I'm going to look for other evidence as well. And it takes courage, by the way. Let me just say that it takes courage when it's somebody in a supervisory position and they have control over your career. This takes a lot of courage to go forth, but I encourage you to do that, because if it's happening to you, chances are the same kind of behaviors happen to someone else. So another member of management in a different department, a different division, or someone in human resources or labor relations, or your union rep if you're unionized.
Thank you very much, Dr. Riley. So we're actually going to do a couple more questions here. What are common mistakes that organizations make when conducting workplace investigations?
Setting out to prove misconduct. That is one of the most common mistakes, right? I know this person, they are, and you never want to label people, but for illustrative purposes, I know they're a troublemaker, so I assume they did it, right? You need to go into an investigation with a neutral perspective. And if you can't do that, right, you can't set aside your opinions, you should not be conducting the investigation. So going in with the view of I'm going to prove misconduct rather than I'm going to find out what happened, very common mistake. Another common mistake is not recognizing that this is really difficult for people. I've had people who have said they've been interviewed and they felt like they were in trouble and they were just the person giving the witness statement. So again, making sure we're treating everybody with dignity and respect, Randall.
Thank you so much. The next question is, how would someone handle a situation where employees are reluctant to participate in an investigation or provide information to help them get to the truth?
That's also, by the way, very, very common, right? And there are specific things you can do to sort of overcome that resistance. One is simply especially if it's the accused that you're interviewing, sometimes people think that just by saying nothing, this is going to go away. That's not the case, right? We are going to make a decision. We have to make a decision. We want to make the decision based on all of the evidence, and this is your opportunity to tell your story, to let us know your side of events. So just let them know we are going to make a decision. Okay? Another thing that we can do, and this applies for everyone, frame it as we want to have a safe and healthy workplace. We can't address these kinds of behaviors unless we know what happened, so we can determine how to take corrective action. Because when we are allowing behaviors to go unchecked, because, well, I don't know anything, nobody willing to talk to us, the kind of behavior very likely will continue because we haven't received the information to take corrective action.
Thank you. Yeah. So we are getting some great questions in. Definitely want to do two more. Okay. So the next one is, how should an organization handle investigations that involve sensitive issues like discrimination, harassment, or retaliation?
All investigations should be handled the same, Randall. Let me just say that. Everybody gets treated with dignity and respect. We keep information as confidential as possible. And again, adopting that trauma-informed approach, especially with things like sexual harassment and where someone has truly been traumatized, recognize this was hard for them to come forward, right? This was very likely hard for them to talk about. So you want to be empathetic, you want to listen, you want to maintain confidentiality to the extent that you can. But recognize that as the investigator, your body language, the way that you're talking with the person can all signal whether or not you are genuinely interested in finding out what happened and took place, or it's uncomfortable for you and you don't really want to be there. So you really have to be intentional in your listening and your empathy in those cases.
Okay. So last question, and I believe this is a very easy or quick one. Investigation results. They should be shared with the accuser and also the accused, correct?
Correct. Yeah, correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Well, Dr. Riley, I really appreciate your time today. You gave us and also the audience some great information. So for all of you all out there, please make sure you're signed up for our email updates so you can receive information for our next 3-part series that will commence next month. So if you see me out on the street and say, hey, I did not get a copy of the webinar and also the slides associated with it, first question I'm going to ask you, did you sign up for email updates? Because that is what you have to do. But I am also excited to announce our upcoming 3-part series will highlight our department's efforts in what we're doing to support mental health within the workplace. So this series will focus on a new pilot program that we've designed to help businesses improve workplace culture, strengthen the overall well-being of their employees, and participants will learn about our goals, our strategies, and also the resources that are available to help foster a healthier and more supportive work environment. So I cannot wait for you all to see what we have prepared. I would like to tell you all have a great day and enjoy this beautiful weather. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. Bye, everybody.